Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Niall O'Connell and Owen McKendry. This is a big fight breakdown for the big heavyweight fight between Filip Hrgovic and Daniel Dubois taking place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on June the 1st. Of course, in the 5x5 against 5 Queensberry versus Matchroom tournament. Gents, another big fight. They keep on coming, don't they? We've got not sure when this video will go out exactly, but obviously got Zhang versus Wilder, Fury versus Usyk, and Hrgovic versus Dubois as well. These kind of top 10, top 15 guys fighting each other, and it's fantastic. Let's be honest, and that's just the heavyweight division. We're going to cover a couple of things in this video. We can't cover absolutely everything we want to talk about because don't want to bore people too much. But here we are. I feel like Daniel Dubois had a really interesting career so far. Was kind of seen as really the next big thing early on in his career, looked very powerful. Um, Went from fighting really nobody to fighting Joe Joyce a few years ago now, at the age, I think he was 23 when that fight happened. And that fight obviously didn't end well for him, ended in a stoppage loss. Um, came back to winning ways and then had that strange fight against Kevin Lorena, didn't he, which he won, but got dropped 3 times, which was very, very odd. And then obviously had that fight against Usyk, which some people thought he shouldn't have taken just because he was never really going to win that fight, even though that fight kind of had its controversial moments. Um, got the stoppage win against Jarrell Miller last time out. Let's not forget, it's been the first man to defeat Jarrell Miller back in December, and now he's going up against the undefeated Filip Hrgovic, who is rated highly. Um, is this a good fight for Daniel Dubois, gents? Still a young man, 26 years old, I believe. Would you have liked to have seen him fight kind of more of a top 20, top 25 opponent, continue to increase his confidence? Or do you think this is the right time for him to be facing someone of Filip Hrgovic's caliber? Owen, I'll go to you first. What are your thoughts here?
I think it has to be the right time, and it's purely because of the way Dubois' career has gone to date. You know, he's been in the ring with Joe Joyce, who stupidly took the Zhang fight, and if he didn't, would likely have been fighting for a world title. He got beat by Usyk, who has a chance to write himself in the history books as one of the greatest to ever do it. Beating Fury and being 2-weight undisputed. I think if Dubois has any aspirations of being a world champion and being at the top level, Hergovich is one of the fights that I would have been happy. Well, I am happy to see because I think people are questioning how good is Hergovich after the Zhang win. Bit of controversy in terms of scorecards on that. So yeah, I think it's probably the ideal fight because Hergovich has got some questions being asked of him. Dubois wants to prove he's back at the top level. And like we say, it's politics of the IBF. There's a very good chance the winner could be facing the winner of Usyk Fury. So I think it's the right time. And if Dubois wants to be at the top level, it's a fight he has to take.
Yeah, look, perhaps it's an opportunity too good to turn down. As you say, like as we're speaking, as we're making this video, we don't know if this fight is for the IBF title. It could well be. Therefore I for a world title. And yeah, like word on the street is that there could be a fight against Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium in September for the winner of this fight, which is of course an iconic venue against one of the biggest names in the sport. So kind of that prize of fighting Joshua at Wembley Stadium is arguably bigger than kind of winning the IBF world title in
Mhm.
itself, arguably. Niall, I'll go to you. Thoughts on this move for Dubois?
I have to agree, to be honest, with what Owen said there in terms of I think it has to be a good fight, and I think as boxing fans, I think it's great to see him taking these big fights now. You know, if you're good enough, if you think you're good enough, why not? You know, he's not a baby anymore. He's still a
Mhm.
very young man in terms of especially heavyweight boxing, but he's kind of past those stages now of taking the easier kind of touches. So I do think it's great to see, whether he wins or loses, he'll probably learn more out of a loss and could come again than he would, even if he loses these fights. So I do think it's great to see him taking these big fights. You know, if if he was taking these so-called softer touches, we'd be sitting here criticizing. To be honest with you, if he was taking kind of poor opponent choices, and I respect the fact that Queensbury and Frank Warren have full belief to put him in with the likes of Filip Hrgovic, Alexander Usyk, and names like that. And of course, last time out against Jarrell Miller, that was a huge win. That was seen as a real 50-50. A lot of people even thought Jarrell Miller beat him, and that would have done him the world of good, confidence wise, especially because there was a lot of questions there. So I think it's great to see him taking this fight. I think it's a big step, but why not? We see too many soft touches, and yeah, I know we're probably going to get into it later in the video, but whether it's a good fight stylistically for him, I'm not too sure, to be honest. But we'll probably be talking about that later.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I feel like there's a lot to unravel here. And of course, like I'm really genuinely looking forward to getting both of your predictions. Not sure what either of you are gonna say, but it's a really tough fight to call. I'll stick with you, Niall. I think another interesting topic is who's going to be the who is going to be the future heavyweight king. We've discussed that a few times in the past. Some people have had some questionable shouts in the past. Not going to mention any names, but you've got if you consider like Usyk, Fury, Wilder, Joshua, they're all mid to late 30s now, and I do personally think in the next 2 to 3 years, I do think all of those guys could be retired, which leaves 4, 5, 6 names of guys who could really take over. There's Jared Anderson from across the pond in the US. There's Bakhmedir Jalilov, who's an incredible amateur but hasn't really done much as a pro yet. There's Daniel Dubois as well. But Filip Hrgovic is that guy he's still undefeated. He's not a young man, 31 years of age now. So he could possibly be in his prime around the time these guys are retiring, and therefore possibly be difficult to beat. Niall, is Filip Hrgovic the future heavyweight king? Is he going to be a future world champion even if he loses against Daniel Dubois? What are your thoughts on how what he can achieve in his career?
I'll say first of all, before I get into his future, just to touch on what you said there, I think kind of if he loses to Daniel Dubois, I think it's going to be a long road back from especially at world level. I think the pressure here is on Filip Hrgovic massively more than Daniel Dubois. I think it's absolute must win. But if he does win, I do think he has the capabilities to become the heavyweight king. I really do. He's such a strange fighter. He's taken a lot of stick the last few years, justifiably so, to be honest with you. From the Zhang performance and his kind of mentality, and does he have the kind of spark to do it and the motivation? But I think when he's on it, as you mentioned, the names there, Fury, Usyk, Joshua Wilder, when they all go, Filip Hrgovic is the most talented of the bunch. It's not outside of them top names. When they retire, it's not a great division. It's really not. And Filip Hrgovic, ability wise, I think is the best, the best of the lot outside the elites. Talent wise. So I do absolutely think he will be a world champion. Could be a multiple belt holder. But I do think he has. Once those names retire, I think I'd back Filip Hrgovic to beat anyone else in the division. To be
Yeah,
honest with you, I do think he will be a world champion.
interesting. It's I think people talk about that Zhang fight a lot. I think people, in my opinion, have maybe jumped on the bandwagon at this idea that it was this massive robbery. I personally think Zhang won, but I'm not calling a robbery. It was a close fight. I don't think either men were very impressive that night, if I'm being honest, but I thought Zhang just about got the job done. But Hergovich, apart from that fight, I don't really think he's put a step wrong. He's looked kind of a bit boring at times, but he's just and if you consider what Zhang's gone on to do post that fight, to have a close fight with Zhang isn't actually I don't think it's not really a disgrace.
There was, sorry to cut across you, but there was the fight against, I believe it was a Dempsey McKean, the fight after Zhang, where he just stunk the place out. He looked terrible, won so comfortably, but it was so boring. And the questions were there. Could he have stepped on the gas and got Dempsey McKean out of there? Possibly. He looked dreadful, to be honest. So there is that kind of lingering question over his mentality. But the talent is undeniable. It really is.
Yeah, and also I think he's had the Zhang fight wasn't that impressive. Had the Dempsey McKean fight wasn't that impressive, and I struggle to call the fight against Mark Demore a fight. That fight just it shouldn't have taken place. It lasted about a minute. It's just like you that shouldn't be on really shouldn't be on Filip Hrgovich's record in my opinion because it was just such a non-event and that fight should have never happened. Moving on in the interest of time, Owen, give us your thoughts. Is Hergovich the future heavyweight king?
I have to concur with pretty much what both of you have said. I think, once you look at AJ, Usyk, Fury, Wilder, Zhang, even your Joe Joyces, they're all mid to late 30s. After that, I don't know if I'm being harsh, but it's a pretty bleak landscape for the heavyweights. Like you said, Eliot, Jalilov hasn't really hit the ground running. Hergovich has stunk the gaff out since he beat Zhang, and then that Mark Demore it was an absolute mockery. Not necessarily as a sport, but for a potential heavyweight king to be fighting someone that fought David Hay 12 years ago is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, it's a tough one because Daniel Dubois is young, so he will always come again, I think. But I think if it's based on skill of what you've seen, Hergovich, he looks like he's the best boxer out of the lot. So I think there is definitely potential. If we go back through the ESBR archives, I picked Hergovich as the next one, and then when he fought Zhang, I was a bit, I don't know if I've gone a bit early then, and the two after it, maybe they've just come at the wrong time. Like you say, I think some of the comments on the Zhang fight were harsh. I thought Zhang nicked it personally, but the latter rounds in that fight was like watching two 60-year-olds fight. The energy levels were just zapped. So it's a difficult one. But I think if you look at who's left, if Jared Anderson carries on bombing people out, and shows power that's shown in his early fights, then I think it will be a big problem. But I think you have to be looking at Hrgovic as sort of the next one in line, definitely.
Yeah, we will see. Of course, has to get past Daniel Dubois on June the 1st first. Owen, I'll stick with you. Without giving your prediction away, there have been reports recently that Anthony Joshua's next fight is going to be at Wembley Stadium in September. It could be against the winner of this fight, which we're expecting to be for the IBF title. It could be the winner of Deontay Wilder versus Zhilei Zhang, which also takes place on June the 1st. Obviously, people have been talking about the Deontay Wilder against Joshua fight probably close to a decade now. And then obviously there's possibility of him fighting the winner of Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk, which takes place on May the 18th. It's a time for a different video to discuss what's really going to happen in September when Joshua fights and the likelihood of all those different opponents. But in your heart of hearts, do you believe the winner of this fight will fight AJ in September, or does it depend on who wins this fight? How would you analyze that situation?
I think either, to be honest, as in whoever wins this will fight AJ. We've seen politics of the IBF in the past and what they're like. So as we said off camera, it wouldn't surprise me if Fury Usyk winner gets stripped within 48 hours of being undisputed. And then obviously AJ is one of the biggest names in the sport. But I think you can look at both sides of it. Hrgovic wins. Everyone says, okay, now it's his time. Now we step him up. He needs a world title fight. Stick him in with AJ. We'll see where he's at world level. Perfect. Daniel Dubois wins. It's an all-British clash for a world title. Two big punching heavyweights. It's likely going to be a knockout victory for either of them. So, to be honest, I think, normally when you look at these, there's sort of one fighter where you can say, I don't really see that fight. But I think both parties, in this case, put up a very, very good case to be facing Joshua in two sort of different aspects of, how would Joshua deal with Hrgovic trying to box really for 12 rounds. And then I just think it'd be a bit of a shootout really with Daniel Dubois. So I think they appeal to sort of both sets of boxing fans, especially within the heavyweight division. And yeah, definitely, I can see the fight being made, regardless of the winner. And I would be happy with either, to be honest.
Yeah, look, there's lots. It's an irritating question, isn't it? Because there's lots of ifs and buts.
Definitely.
I think if I could just throw my 50 pence in here, I think that there's just an argument to say Hrgovic fight is possibly the easiest fight out of those, and it's for a world title. And it's just, I think, for Joshua to return to Wembley Stadium when he's kind of at the peak of his powers again and very popular with the British public could make for quite a special event. So, yeah, personally, I'm fairly confident that we will see Joshua face the winner of this fight in September. Niall, what are your thoughts? Are you going to disagree with us?
No, I have to agree totally with both of you. I think it will be. Definitely, I think that's the next step. As we mentioned, Fury and the winner of Fury and Usyk will be stripped. I think it's pretty safe to say that they'll be stripped pretty soon after their fight. And yeah, within the rankings of the IBF, I think the winner of this is in prime position to face AJ. And take what Owen said, the style clashes there with whoever wins is going to be fascinating. You know,
Yeah.
how would AJ deal with the ability and the boxing of Hergovich, and how would he deal with Dubois landing on his chin, and of course Dubois AJ all British Wembley headliner would be huge. So yeah, I do. I'm just interested now to see. He says it's probably for another video, but does AJ take a fight in between? Who knows? Maybe in the summer, and then, kind of a handy one in the summer, and then on to Wembley in September.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think another factor here is that all these guys we're discussing are big names to casual fans. All of these guys, except Wilder, have fought in the UK. They're names that people know, so it's not like a hard sell. Joshua against Hrgovic, Joshua against Dubois, Joshua against Zhang, Joshua against one of the other guys. It's really not. All right, really enjoyed this one, gents. I don't know what either of you are going to say here. One thing I will say, just looked at the latest betting odds on the platform that I use. Hrgovic is a 4-9 favourite, whereas Daniel Dubois is a 7-4 outsider. So make of that what you will. In 30 seconds or less, please tell me who you think wins this fight and how. Owen, I will go with you first.
I think it's an extremely close fight. It is a tough one to call, but I'm not going to go along the Paul Kelly road of cop-outs and draws. I think Hergovich is going to get the job done on points, but I think he's going to get dropped along the way. So I think it'll be a fairly close points decision after getting up off the canvas for Filip Hrgovic.
Okay, 1-0 to Filip Hrgovic. Niall.
You might think I'm crazy, but I don't think this is close to call at all. I just can't see how Daniel Dubois beats him. I really don't. I think Hergovich 85% beats Dubois, and I think he's just gonna outbox him. I think he's gonna box rings around him and stop him late. I like Dubois, but I'm gonna say round 9, Hergovich stoppage.
We shall see. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Daniel Dubois, and I just think he is not going to be the heavyweight that many people thought he was going to be. He's not going to be kind of undisputed world champion, but at the same time, he can still, in my opinion, he can still be a top 10 heavyweight, maybe even a top 5 heavyweight in the future. But I don't think he beats Filip Hrgovic, so I'm going Hrgovic probably on points. So I'm going to join both of you, and that was the reason why I slipped in that question at the beginning of this, kind of saying, is this the right fight for Daniel Dubois? Because in my opinion, I get the opportunities there, but it'd be better just to kind of get a couple more wins under your belt after that Usyk loss, continue to rebuild, and then maybe go for a massive fight next year. However, that's not happening. Filip Hrgovic versus Daniel Dubois is taking place. We have broken it down, given our predictions. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us what you think is going to happen in this fight. Owen, Niall, good to speak to both of you as always, and I'll speak to both of you again soon.